May this reading relax your mind and awaken your heart. This is the 10th chapter. On the back of a truck piled high with burlap sacks of grain, I reached the border of Afghanistan. The shabbiness of the immigration post signaled the poverty of the nation, yet the immigration officials offered a cordial welcome, quite different from most other border guards I'd experienced thus far. My first stop in Afghanistan was Herat. The people here were charming and friendly. In the stark desert terrain, they wore raggedy, dusty clothing and lived in shambled dwellings. Although they were the poorest people I had seen in my travels yet, everyone I passed offered a smile, and no one asked me for anything. On the contrary, they were eager to share what little they had. Each day in Herat, I was invited into their homes. Usually, a family lived in a hut of one small room. They joyfully shared their flat bread with mine. My hosts could neither read nor write, yet so many of them struck me as both humble and wise, living with dignity the tribulations of their life. Although they spoke not a word of English, the communication of the heart that we shared was especially satisfying to me. On a winter day in 1970, a small tea stall in Herat, I wrote a letter home. Hello, my family. How is life? I am now in Herat, Afghanistan. It is amazing to be here in a country with people that are naturally friendly and humble, poor but peaceful. I know it is late, but I will still wish a happy birthday to Dad and Larry. I wish you the very best of everything. With love, Richard. Early one morning, I innocently set out to explore the town of Herat and stumbled into a neighborhood unlike any I had ever experienced. 'Twas late morning as I stood on a dusty roadside and observed my surroundings, at first enjoying the sights. Looking around, I was transported into a realm of timeless simplicity. My heart pounded. Camel after camel sauntered by. There were no sounds of horns or modern vehicles, only camel hooves clacking on an earthen road. Families were crowded into tiny one-story houses made of dried mud. A pungent taste of arid dust dried in my mouth, and the smell of camel excrement and burning wood assaulted my nose. People chatted while squatting on the roadside, dressed in their traditional Afghani clothing. Their loosely fitting garments were elegant though faded and tattered with wear. Men wrapped long sheets of cloth around their heads as turbans, and many had faces riddled with deep blotches, scars made by smallpox. Like aged leather, their skin was dried and toughened by the elements, and huge, spontaneous smiles revealed rotting or missing teeth. Baggy shirts extended below their knees as they performed their chores, apparently with no concern for the time. Women covered their faces with a fine mesh and wore blue or black gowns that reached from the top of their heads down to the ground, leaving no trace of their bodies visible. A blind man sat on the road singing religious songs in a high voice as he thumped the skin of a drum. It was cold, but smoke from cooking fires filled the air. Suddenly, quite unexpectedly, I was literally brought to my knees by culture shock. My eyes burned from the smoke. I felt dizzy and nauseated, deeply disoriented and afraid. All at once, I found it impossible to identify with anything my five senses perceived. Utterly alienated, my ego succumbed to a painful breakdown. On my knees, sweating with emotion, I struggled to connect something to the world that I knew. I failed. I felt totally disconnected. Although the dire poverty was disheartening, the people of Herat appeared to be the happiest, most carefree people I'd ever seen. This surreal combination of poverty and happiness short-circuited my intellect. Old men sat on the roadside smoking from large water pipes. The scent of the arid desert dust blended with the acrid, I don't know how to pronounce this word, aroma of hashish. The sights, smells, and sounds were disconcertingly foreign to my senses. I was alone in a culture where nothing existed that I could relate to. As I sat motionless on that roadside, a lonely alien in a distant universe, I prayed to be spared from this confusion. What was happening to me? What was the cause of this bewilderment? Why was I so affected? I grappled to find myself. From birth, I'd identified with my external surroundings. Not until this moment could I fathom the extent to which I had been conditioned. Just as wearing green-colored glasses tinges everything we see as green, so according to our surroundings and experiences, we have a particular perception of reality. The conceptions perceived by my body and mind had become my identity. Now those familiar conceptions had evaporated, casting me into a void. God, please help me. Who am I? Who am I? Who really am I? The world around me seemed to disappear as my prayer and meditation transported me into a state where a silent inner presence predominated over the phenomenal world. There I discovered a precious truth, a truth that awakened a sense of shelter and freedom. I am the soul, distinct from the world of externals, a child of God. The blaze of culture shock had acted like the rays of the sun to dissipate the fog of misconception. I felt liberated. Flooded with gratitude, I knew that Herat would forever remain a sacred place on the map of my heart. Whenever I look back to that day, I am reminded how prayers may be answered in ways we never expect. To grow may require that we be shaken right to our core. While kneeling on that roadside in Herat, something died within me, giving birth to a realization necessary for me to move forward on my path. With each step, a camel lifts its hoof from a stable place on earth in order to move forward. And to reach the sea, each ripple of the river must let go of its present state to surrender to the current. As I walked back to my room, I came upon an aged man slumped on the roadside. Beneath his head wrap was a face defined with deep crevices and sagging with wrinkles. His toothless smile was radiant as he waved for me to share the hashish in his hookah. Smiling, I politely declined. His culture had already given me a high I prayed never to forget. Let's pause our reading there for now. Thank you for listening. I look forward to unfold the adventures of our dear author with you next time. I invite any insight that you may have had as we listened on embracing transformative release, trusting in the journey that unfolds before us, celebrating newfound inner freedom, especially when we least expect it. Namaste.